Hello everybody, this is Ben. I am back with another video. Today we are going to be looking at all starting shooting guards in the NBA. So we're back with Tier Maker, and today instead of point guards we're going to be covering shooting guards. So without further ado, I say we get into it. And this is as per Tier Maker's listings as far as who is out there for starting shooting guards. I didn't make this one myself. I did put in these tiers over here, but the player pool, I just pulled a pre-existing one. So if there seems like a slight inconsistency or anything with what you think who the team is starting currently, it's per what the website said already. So the 5 tiers I have: All NBA, All Star, Above Average Starter, Average Starter, and Role Player, and I'll get into the definitions of each as I put players into each category. So let's start with James Harden, who I have in here as All NBA. And really, to me, All NBA is like sort of one of the 3 best players at the position, because in theory, you'd have one player at each position on each All NBA team, which is 3 spots. So James Harden, I think, is definitely one of the 3 best shooting guards in the league right now. And I think that he's obviously a former MVP, very good. I like him a lot. If you've watched my channel for a long time, you know I used to have a James Harden poster in the background. That was at a different house, but yeah, James Harden I think is the man overall, and he's definitely on that All NBA tier. I'm going to switch it up and go in different orders here. I have RJ Barrett, I'm going to say right now is a role player. Wild inconsistencies with his game, so I'm not even going to put him at the starter level yet. I think just as for what he is today, he is a role player. Let's go with Gary Harris next. I think he is an average starter. I think he is kind of on the low end of average starter, though, where he really, a guy who, again, is pretty inconsistent and might be demoted to like a role player status if he was having an inconsistent season. But on his better seasons, I'd say he flirts with the above average starter category. So I think when you combine those two, it really puts him in the average starter category. Paul George, I'm going to put as All NBA. Gives you a lot of great plays on offense and on defense. He is really probably the most well-rounded player of this group of shooting guards as far as giving you the most consistent performances both on offense and on defense. One of my favorite players. I love how tall he is for the shooting guard position. He is around 6'10", and he this year has been playing a lot of shooting guards, so I really like guys who are really tall for their position, so I think that's really cool, and he definitely deserves to be in that top tier to me. Dillon Brooks, I'm going to say role player. I'm going to say that he could teeter on starter. I think he needs to develop a little bit more, become more consistent, and get his efficiency up a bit, and become more of a scoring threat. I think right now he averages around like 10 points per game. If he could get that up to like 14, I'd put him in that average starter category. But for right now, I'm going to leave him in as a role player. A good contributor to that Memphis team, but I think I think he is starting right now, but I think he wouldn't start on many teams in the NBA. Let's see here. Next, I have Bradley Beal. I'm going to put him in the All-Star tier. I know a lot of people would think that he should be in the All-NBA tier, but I think, he's on a Washington team that's pretty bad, and I think the reason he's averaging like 31 points per game this season is really because John Wall's out and they lack a lot of scoring options right now. So for those reasons, I'm putting him in the All-Star category. Jimmy Butler, I'm really debating what I should do, All NBA or All Star. He's really in between for me. I'm gonna lean towards. I guess I'm gonna lean towards All NBA because with my whole theory of like you should have at least 3 guys in each position, I'd say that he would be that third guy for me. I think again with Paul George, what Jimmy Butler does to set him apart is he plays a lot of good offense and defense, and his scoring has gone down a bit since he left Chicago, but he's still a very consistent threat on both sides of the ball. Let's see here. Luke Kennard, I'd say he used to be a role player, but this year he's developed into like an average starter. Pretty good player, I'd say overall. Um, on a woebegone Detroit team, I might add. So like he's putting up pretty good stats on a really bad team. I think on like any other team, he'd be like an average starter though. But like on Detroit, he kind of looks good just because the team is so bad. Next, Jalen Brunson. I'm gonna say role player. I think he's kind of um, a six man type who actually reminds me a lot of another guy on this list who I would put in here as Jordan Clarkson. I'm actually gonna put Jordan Clarkson on here right now as average starter. I think like Jalen Brunson's upside is like Jordan Clarkson, who on teams that are devoid of scoring can give you like 16 to 17 a night. On really good teams, Clarkson's going to be giving you like 10 points a game, but on bad teams, he'll give you like 16 to 17. I think on the Jazz right now, he's averaging like 14 a game. He's been a nice surprise for them, but I think, yeah, he's a really good scoring option. He actually comes off the bench a lot of the time, but recently I think the Jazz had began starting him, so he is technically a starter right now. Let's see here. I think this is Damian Lee of the Warriors. I'm going to say role player. He's only starting because Clay's out, and really, I don't know if Damian Lee even deserves NBA minutes. He's not a bad player. I just think he has like so much room for improvement. He is very young, so there's a lot of time to tell. But right now, I'm going to say role player. Bryn Forbes, same thing. I think role player. Um, I think on any playoff team, he would not be starting, and I think even on some lottery teams he wouldn't be starting. So I think for me that automatically puts him in that role player status. Not hugely fond of his game necessarily, so I'm putting him a little bit lower. Um, Colin Sexton, I think he's very similar to like Jordan Clarkson's imprint of like will give you 17, 16, 18 points per game on a bad team, and I think on like a really good team he'd play like 20 minutes a night and give you like 12 points off the bench. But yeah, I'll put him in as an average starter just because I think like when you average out those two extremes, he'd be like 15 points per night on like a somewhat contending NBA team. Kevin Herter, I'm going to say average starter right now. I see some upside for him. I think he could become an above average starter like a Kyle Korver type. I think right now him and Luke Kennard are very similar, so I would put those two together sort of in this list as playing very much like a spot up shooter kind of role, but being pretty efficient at it, and still very young, lots of room to grow as well. Let's see here. Let's go for some other random orders. Bogdan Bogdanovic, I'm going to say above average starter. He's shown some real promise this year, and I think he's more efficient than like these two guys right here. But he's kind of that instant offense kind of player. He kind of combines what you'd say is like the instant offense off the bench kind of guy with this kind of spot up shooter of Luke Kennard and Herter. So I think he's a nice blend of a lot of different skill sets. And this year on the Kings, he's putting up like 15 a game, and he's going into free agency, so he'll probably get paid pretty well. So above average starter to me. Malik Beasley, had a good stretch for the Timberwolves so far. He's averaging like something like 20 points per game since joining the Timberwolves, but I just think that that sample size is so small. I'm not fully willing to put him into that next tier yet. So for me, average starter, but his efficiency has looked great since joining the Timberwolves. So we'll just have to continue to see how he progresses. Let's go Devin Booker. I'm gonna say All Star. Very similar to Brad Beal. Puts up great stats on a terrible team, and I think that's good enough to be an All Star, but not good enough for All NBA consideration, in my opinion. Um, yeah, that's kind of my stance on him. Similar feel for. I'm gonna do another two guys here. Zach LaVine, similar thing. He averages very similar to what Devin Booker averages, but he plays on a terrible team, and a lot of people might argue like you can be a great player on a terrible team, but I think like at some point your stats, if they're really good, they translate to winning. And I don't necessarily believe in empty stats, but I think like just his style of play isn't necessarily transferable to winning. So I'm gonna say role like all star. I think on a championship level team, the a guy like Zach LaVine is like your third best player. Same with Brad Beal. Same with Devin Booker. So I'm putting them in this all star tier. I think all NBA is like you could be the second best player or even the best player on a championship team. For Butler, more like second best. For these two, like Paul George, second best. For James Harden, he definitely could be like the best guy, like the number one on a championship team. So that's kind of a distinction there if you've been curious. And then this above average starters, like you could be like the fourth or fifth best guy on your team. Probably like the fourth best guy or the third best guy if you play on a team with a guy like Giannis. And then the average starter is like the probably around the fifth best guy on a championship team, or a little bit worse if they have a really good sixth man. Um, keep going. Devonte Graham. He's really in that Colin Sexton category to me. I think like Devonte Graham is putting up like 18 points per game this year, but shooting under 40% from the field and like under 30% from three. I'm pretty sure. So he's a volume scorer on terrible efficiency, which to me puts him in this average starter tier because like on a really good team, he'd probably average like 10 points a game on normal efficiency. So to me, that's like an average starter. Fred VanVleet above average. Basically, he's doing what these guys are doing, but he isn't terrible as far as efficiency goes. Not great by any means. Not even really good. Just like average efficiency. But doing the volume scoring this year of like 18 points per game. So I got to put him a little bit above those guys for the better efficiency. Jrue Holiday, all star, brings it on both ends of the court. Great player. Underappreciated by some, but I think those who really know basketball know what Jrue Holiday brings to the game. He is a former All Star as well. Oladipo, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's still recovering from injury. I'm going to say All Star level. I think he, he's very similar to Jrue Holiday actually when he's healthy. Like, gives you around 20 points per game. Very good on both ends of the court. Josh Richardson, this is hard to you put him here, you put him here. I don't know. I'm gonna say average starter because Miami was a lottery team last year and he averaged like 17 points per game and looked really good. But now on a contending team in Philly, he's averaging like 12 points and looks very normal. So I'm gonna say average starter. Um, let's go Jaylen Brown, above average starter for now, but very close to the All Star tier, like right on the cusp of being in the All Star tier for me. Um, having a great year. Actually, I'm gonna put him in that All Star tier. I think because I think his averages are right on par with some of these other guys, like Oladipo when he was being considered a great player 2 years ago, like in his breakout season. His averages are basically what Jaylen Brown is averaging now, and Jaylen Brown's also playing very high quality defense. Um, SGA above average starter has lots of room to grow and probably will be an all-star at some point, but right now above average starter. Really tall guard, kind of got the body frame of Penny Hardaway, but still developing a lot of his skills, but very athletic, and I'm excited to see what's to come with him. Evan Fournier above average starter. He's kind of peaked right now at like decent shooting and 18 points per game, and he's kind of plateaued at that level. I think that's what he will be for the remainder of his career for the most part, and so yeah, that's all I gotta say about him. There's not much to his game, honestly, for me. Joe Harris and Danny Green, I'm gonna put in both at the average starter level. Used to be the above average starters. Joe Harris kind of teeters on that, but I think like he puts up like 11. These guys are the kind of guys that put up like 10 to 12 points per game. They might win a few games for you on like game winners, but they're never going to be the guy where you're like, wow, they scored 30 points, except for Danny Green in the 2013 finals. They're just going to be like very consistent, which is valuable to a contending team, but I don't think that they'd be nearly as valuable on like lottery teams. Wes Matthews, he's deteriorated a little bit this year. I'm gonna say role player. Still brings value to a team, but a role player. And then CJ McCollum, I think he's an all-star level player, but he's just trapped in the West, where there's so many good guards that it's hard for him to get into the all-star game. But there you have it, guys. Those are my rankings. Let me know in the comments what you think, or tell me your own rankings, or link to this kind of a thing, and you can show me what you think. This is a position where it's definitely not a ton of star players at this position, in my opinion. A lot of just like role player supporting pieces kind of guys. So yeah, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.